Hi everybody, welcome to Clasheen. My name is Nicola Brown. I'm primarily a felt maker and eco printer, developing a sustainable practice where I grow my own vegetation to print onto my textiles. So this stream today is obviously coming from Ireland, where I live, but please feel free to drop me a comment in the chat and let me know where you're tuning in from. It's lovely to look back afterwards and feel connected to different people around the world. So the topic that I'm going to be covering today is how to price your craft, your handmade items. And in fact, this formula works whether you are working with textiles, as I am, whether you are a potter or a jeweler. But the thing is, it's a very difficult topic. People usually get very stressed about pricing craft, and I'm hoping today that I'm actually going to be able to demystify this for you to a degree. So regardless of where you actually sell your work, whether it would be a craft fair, an exhibition, a market, or maybe you sell to the trade, I find that the system I'm going to show you today or share with you today works for all of these. And it was taught to me 6 years ago by a wonderful mentor here in Ireland. I was accepted on a program with the Design and Crafts Council, and part of that was working out my prices. And I have to say it was quite a big shock. And it gave me a wake-up call. Once I started applying this formula, I was anxious at the beginning, but it really makes sense. So I think without further ado, I'm going to actually just jump right into it. But if you're actually new to events altogether, you might just want to check out my other video. I'll leave a link in the video description. It just goes through everything you need to do before you get to an event. But obviously, I would be hoping that you would have your items made and the pricing done before you prepared for any event. So the first thing you need to do is you need to identify what the cost of your raw materials actually is. So it can be quite simple if you are, for example, a painter on silk. So if you're painting silk scarves, it's going to be very easy to work out, if you're buying the scarves in bulk or from a wholesaler, how much per item each scarf costs at the very beginning. Now, this may be more difficult if you are a felt maker. And let's say you're making felt bags. So you might have a combination of wool, you might have embellishing fibers, you might decide you're adding leather handles. So all of those individual fibers and embellishments and finishing items need to be costed out. So you have that base cost of the materials for whatever you are making. So that's the first figure that you need to write down. So the cost, the actual raw material cost of the item you are making. Step number 2 is more difficult, although I did eventually get this worked out, but it is quite difficult. So basically, you need to work out what your insurance is for your studio and maybe event insurance for the year, your utility bills that are related to your actual work. So for example, as an eco printer, my gas bills and my timber, if I'm not using my own timber, those bills would be taking up quite a large percentage of that particular cost for an individual item, because I would like to have my pieces processing in the eco printing pot for up to 5 hours. So fuel is an important resource for me. I do try and use my own timber, but of course I use gas too. So if you were somebody who is doing more felting, you might decide that you're working with a sander. I don't do that anymore, although I did before, but in that case, you would have a cost for electricity. So I found this very, very difficult to work out, but with the help of my mentor, we finally worked out that I needed to add an extra €2.50 onto the individual cost of every single item I made, Basically, that was my costs for the year divided by the number of items. And that was sort of a flat rate that I now apply. If I'm trying to price an item that I'm going to sell, I add 250 onto that item. Now, times change, things go up, things go down, the cost of things. My mentor said that my figure of 250 was actually relatively high. It wouldn't necessarily be as high for as many craft workers, but it was because of what I was using. So you are going to add the cost of your raw material and the cost of that little percentage of your insurance, your utility bills, etc., that relate to your studio. You're going to add those together. So that is the second thing you are doing. And while I just get ready for the third thing, I'm just delighted to see we already have people watching from Ireland, from America, different parts of America, from England, from Edinburgh. So thank you all so much for joining. If you're watching on the replay, just leave your destination in the comments below. So once you have totaled up the cost of your raw materials and the insurance, this is going to really shock you. I suspect you're going to multiply that cost by 2. Now, this is not what you're selling your piece for, obviously, but you're going to multiply that cost by 2. So something like a felt scarf, I just looked back over some of my own figures of how much things actually, cost. I wouldn't actually have a very high cost for the wool for something like a scarf, or even for a silk scarf. The cost of that wouldn't be very high. I add in the 250, I multiply it by 2. And so you may be asking, why multiply by 2? Well, as I say, prices fluctuate. So if you're buying silk, you may well discover that the price throughout the year is changing. They have, the trade suppliers, certainly the prices of silk have gone up. Sometimes you might have an issue with your order. It may not actually get delivered to you. You might have to drive to a neighboring county or collect raw materials from somebody. So you need to have a little bit of leeway built into this process, because once you settle on your final price, either your trade price or your retail price, you do not want to be changing that for the end consumer or for any trade customers. That has to stay fixed. So it's a good policy to multiply by 2 at the beginning, and then we go on from there. So the next thing we need to do is add in the time it takes to make your item. So you need to price and add the hours that you work. Or if you pay somebody else to work on a piece with you, you need to be truthful about this. So although I did my initial pricing about 6 years ago when I started with this method, I decided at that stage I would price my own time, the money I was happy to earn at that time per hour for making work, not exhibition work, but for making products that I would be bringing to events. I decided I was very happy to earn 15 euros per hour. And I also found somebody, a friend locally, who was happy to work for 10 euros an hour, which was just slightly above our minimum wage at the time. So if I needed extra help, I could pay her 10 euros an hour for her help, and I charged my own at 15 euros per hour. Now, that is really important to be truthful about that, because ultimately you're going to discover that there are items, and I'll give you a little bit of an example when I've gone through the whole formula, but you will discover that there are items that you get pleasure making, but they are not a viable opportunity if you actually want to make an income from your business. Whereas there will be other items, maybe you don't enjoy the process as much, or maybe you enjoy it every bit as much, and they do not take anything like as long to make, or maybe the initial costs are lower. But in general, I find it's the time that brings the end price up the most. So you need to be truthful about this. So what I would recommend is I would recommend that you actually decide for yourself how much you would be happy working for per hour. It might be $15. You might be happy working for 10. You might say you wouldn't get out of bed if you weren't getting $200 per hour, but only you can decide what that price actually is going to be. So I cannot recommend enough that you just decide on that and you go for it. So if I'm making a felt scarf, that might take me, depending on what type of scarf I was making, 4 hours to make. Whereas if I'm making a felt bangle, that might be a really quick process. So obviously there's less material in the bangle and there's less time involved in that. So there's a difference in the end price. So we've started at the beginning. We have our raw materials cost, that's number one. We have the percentage price of your expenses using your studio and any equipment that you use. You're going to add, you double that, then you add in the hours that you've worked. So the next thing you need to do is you need to price all those little sundry extras that you're going to be offering your gifts in or your products in. So that could be gift packaging, it could be boxes. You'll obviously want a business card. At the beginning, I printed hand-printed cards, paper cards for absolutely everything. But as my business scaled up, there are only so many hours in the day. So eventually what I did was I actually used one of my favorite eco prints, and I had postcards printed with that. I had care labels printed and I had business cards. So at the beginning or for a personal present, I will write a note on a handmade card, but it's just not possible when you scale up to do that always. So you need to be sensible about these things and you need to put this into your calculation. So swing tags. Swing tags, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Vistaprint. I have got no affiliation with Vistaprint, but I'm thrilled now that they are actually printing swing tags. So those are a little bit like luggage tags, but you get them punched out. They come and you can have an image on one side and text on the other. So I find them wonderful. And then they're already punched with a little hole and then you just put string. So a swing tag is what a shop would use and it looks very professional on your garments. So you can have something very simple printed on them, such as at the back, I have got fabric with a colon, and then underneath eco printing vegetation. So I would then handwrite the name of the vegetation that I used for the printing, and I would also handwrite what the actual fabric is. But if you were doing a lot of the same sort of things, of course, you could just have a Vistaprint fill out everything for you. But swing tags are wonderful. So you need to work out how much your packaging, your business card and your swing tags, whatever you have for each individual item. So I'm just going to refer to my initial figures. So at the beginning, €4, believe it or not, was the price of my packaging. And the reason for that was I was using extremely good quality brown craft boxes. I was using good quality acid-free tissue paper. I had care labels or cards that I had printed. And in fact, for larger items, my packaging could go up to approximately €6, and that's just because of what I use. So that's important for you to recoup. So you need to actually make sure that you add that to the cost of each individual item. Now, when I was participating in more farmers markets, organic markets years ago, you don't have to have very expensive gift packaging for your pieces. It depends what route you're going down, but something that's very nice are just simple brown paper sandwich bags. And you can stamp your logo on the front of them and you can pop your items in them. Those are perfect as well. I would also use brown bags. And sometimes through the years, if I actually had a sale, a studio sale, I would give people the option. They could pay less and they needn't have the gift packaging, or if they wanted gift packaging, they could get it from me at cost. But that's just something to consider. So you need to add all that in into your price. Now, there's something else that you need to add in, and it is just the fact that if you are at this stage, you're almost ready to go, but you might get somebody else's help. So for example, I employed a good friend to sew all my lamb's wool cushions. So I designed the cushions, I eco-printed the fabric, I bought wonderful feather-filled liners. They also had the correct fire, treatment regulations, etc. So I actually paid somebody to sew my cushion covers for me. I wanted to have the most professional job done, and I got really good quality zips. It's important, I think, the materials are the least expensive item when you actually arrive at your end price. So I would recommend that it's something you consider, unless you particularly love sewing. You may find that you would prefer to sew and have somebody else employ them to iron. Don't be afraid to employ somebody to do things if it makes your life easier. So you need to then add that price. So for me, the price of the actual sewing, the actual physical zips and the thread and the feather liner, that would all have to go on to the price of a cushion at that end stage. And then this means that you have now arrived at your wholesale price, and that would be excluding value added tax. Now, in your different countries, you may have a different tax system, but this first price that we have arrived at, that is the price that you arrive at before any tax has been taken into consideration. It is also your wholesale price. This is not your retail price. This is not what your items sell at, and it is also not what your items, what you should sell them yourself. By that, I mean, if you're selling at an event or if they go to a shop for a trade, as a trade customer, you want to be selling your pieces for the same price. You don't want to undercut somebody who is actually being good and supporting you. So you have now arrived at your wholesale price. And in Ireland, this is the really difficult thing to imagine. In Ireland, if I sell to a shop that is registered for this value added tax, that shop multiplies my final figure by 2.6. So if, for argument's sake, I sell them something, the trade price is 100 euros exactly, they retail that at 260 euros. So that may be a little bit difficult if you're used to making things yourself and you haven't explored this sticky topic, but I want to explain a few things to you. So when you multiply by 2.6 or 2.5, that's your retail price. So if you sell to a shop, I recommend that you have a minimum order. So you're going to be selling hundreds of euros worth or hundreds of dollars worth of products to a shop. They pay you and then they get their profit. But if you have work that goes into a gallery situation or a sale or return situation, which I personally don't do now, I don't recommend, but some people may choose to do it. I hear people complaining so many times, oh, but the gallery is taking 40% or 50%. My conversation with you is get over it. If it's in a shop, they're going to get a lot more than that. You have got to understand and price your work correctly at the very beginning, and then you are not going to be disappointed later on. So there are a couple of things that I would say. If you work out the price of an item and you think it is way too expensive to sell, just take your own emotions out of it. But if you think it really is way, way, way too expensive and you enjoy making that item, that might be an item that you only sell yourself, that you don't offer anywhere else. It doesn't go anywhere on sale or return, or it's something you make that you enjoy making. But if you're engaged in trade and you have an item like that, or you want something that's almost not exactly a loss leader, but if you think you need something that's inexpensive and you're going to sell more to the shop if they have an inexpensive option and a more expensive option, my advice to you is don't go down that route. And when I was doing trade orders, I was advised not to, because what happens if I've got, let's just say I've got this bangle here And this bangle is very, very, very affordable. And I also have felt scarves. And I have identified a shop that really loves my work, and they want to order felt scarves from me, and they also want bangles. And their theory is that whoever may not have enough money to afford the scarf will want the bangle. So what happens if they order 100 bangles from me? First of all, I'm having to churn out work, which is not what I want to do. I'm not making any profit on it if I've cut the price right down, and it's a total waste of time. It's much better to make less pieces of higher quality and get paid properly for doing them. So let's just take something like a retail event. So prior to lockdown, I was doing several upmarket retail events every year. Some were jewelry shows in galleries, and some were very big. Also, you had to be selected, but they would be very big national events, and they would last for 5 days in our big Royal Dublin Society, big hall in Dublin. So if I have not priced my own work at the retail price I would expect a shop to sell the work at, I'm in big trouble. So to give you a little bit of an indication, a very small stand there, 3 meters by 2. So that's approximately 7 feet by whatever. My maths isn't the best right now because I'm concentrating on the price, but a small stand. By American standards, certainly a very, very, very small space. I would be paying maybe between 2,500 and 3,000 euros for that small space. Usually at the bigger events, when you scale up your size, you can often get the second stand at half price. But I would have to go to the event. I would have to pay somebody to work for me, setting things up. I might have to pay somebody to do some work at home while I was away. I would have to pay for accommodation for 7 days if it was a 5-day event, sometimes 8 days. I would have to pay for all my food at the event, and I would have to pay for, if I was employing somebody to help me, I would have to pay for their food as well. So you can see, while it may seem as if I would be earning a lot more money because I'm getting all that profit that the retailer would get, you can also see that my expenses would dramatically shoot up. So you've got that leeway if you price your own items for you to sell yourself at the retail price. You've got that bit of leeway and you can afford to spend more on your stand, etc. Now, I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any questions. So please just stick those questions actually in a comment for me. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to give you a little bit of an example. I have a felt bangle on my arm. I'll just take it off. This bangle actually was one of the very first pieces I ever felted that was 3-dimensional. I felted this in about 2008 and I still wear it to this day. So if I was to make this bangle now, we're not going to work out exactly how much it would sell for, but if I was to make this bangle now, this would not retail at too big a price. Because first of all, it's using the most incredibly microscopic amount of wool. The wool that I used for this was natural and undyed. I have no embellishing fibers. And if I weighed this in grams, it would be very, very light. This bangle would not take me very long to make. It would take me far less. Well, let's say it took an hour. Let's just say it took an hour. It would take me less, but let's say it took an hour. This bangle, it's got an hour of my work. It's got almost no material cost. I wouldn't actually probably add the 250 onto it because it's not really used any electricity or anything, but I would have to add a percentage of my insurance. So let's say we add €1 on. But by the time I get to the end, this bangle would not be that expensive. And then if we look at this bangle here, I actually have a tutorial on YouTube for that. So you can have a look in my wet felting playlist and you can learn how to make any of these bangles for yourselves. So like the first bangle, this one, it may look bigger, but it's got almost the same amount of wool and it's got a little bit of silk embellishing fiber. And again, this won't take me very long to make. So again, not very expensive. Now, if we look at this bangle, very, very simple, made the same way, made in natural undyed wool, and it also has embellishing fibers. However, this bangle had two processes. So this was wet felting and this was eco printing. So while the bangle wouldn't really have taken any more time to make, this now has had two processes. So it has more hours involved in it. And then if I take this one here, which actually I need to go back and revisit some of my felt jewelry. I love this, although I haven't worn this for a long time. So this took a very long time to make. So in this case, I made a pre-felt to look like stones, and it had some glittery Angelina in it. I cut the pre-felt out. I made this toggly closure. This started really big, and this probably took me, the actual bangle or bracelet may have taken me, aside from the pre-felt, 4 hours to make. So I could easily see myself pricing a bangle like this, or an eco-printed one, or a colored one with silk. I could see myself pricing them to sell, but I would never try and sell that at an event. I would make one of those for myself or for a friend and enjoy it. I wouldn't try and sell that. I'm just going to check for questions because I'm going to give you a tip now. All right, so thank you so much, Paula. So Paula is saying she just gave a pricing talk to a group in Pennsylvania, the Guild of Craftsmen. And she says she's thrilled to hear my take on pricing, reinforcing her. So I'm really, really thrilled, Paula, because so many people think this is crazy, but this is how it is. This is how life is. And you do yourself and other artists and crafts people a disservice if you underprice for your work. So thank you so much, Paula, for that. Very happy to see that comment there. So I want to give you a tip. Choose what you want to make yourselves, obviously. But if you are making something like these bangles, these simple bangles, whether they are bangles with embellishments or bangles you intend to eco print afterwards, and it could be with some other product that you do yourself. You are the only person who knows your own process. Rather than just making one of these and printing it and making another and printing it, because of the template shape for this, again, have a look at my bangle tutorial. It's a long rectangular template. So in fact, I can lay out one piece of felt, which I subsequently divide near the end of the felting process. And I can make 5 bangles in very less additional time than I can make one. The additional time comes when I'm sealing the edges and finishing the pieces, because I want them to be nice and not have rough edges. So there may be some part of your process where you can actually say, yes, I like the bangles, I want to make them. Can I make more than one at a time? It could be the same for other things. And obviously with eco printing, I would never just eco print one piece. I would obviously always eco print multiple pieces in the pot at the one time. Because if I was printing individually, it's a big waste of my time, it's a waste of my resources, and it's going to pump my price up. So I hope you have enjoyed this. I'm going to just give you 1 minute. So please, thank you so much, all of you, for joining. Just shoot me a comment if you have a question now, or if you are watching this on the replay, add your comment under the video and I will get back to you at a future date, and hopefully I will be able to answer it for you. But don't forget, I do have an event preparation checklist. There's a link to a free checklist for you if you are intending on participating in shows and events. And I think that's it. Thank you so much. And over and out from Clasheen. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you so much for joining me. Whoops, there might be a question. Oh, some thank you. So we have one question coming in. Okay. Oh, actually, we now have a few questions coming in. Okay. So question, let's just start. Let's just go for this one here. Hang on a second. Sorry, just give me 1 second. I have to Stop sharing this banner. Okay. And I'm going to go to the questions. Okay. So Jane is saying, I'm buying pre-made silk scarves for eco printing to save me hand rolling. Do I still multiply the price by 2? Yes, Jane, you do. So my scarves that I buy, I also buy them hand rolled, and it's very interesting. I used to charge at the very, very beginning when I had very light silk and I was doing markets. I used to charge 20 euros for a naturally dyed scarf, and they sold. When I started eco printing and I was working with heavier quality scarves, this is before I ever learned this pricing method, and I was experimenting, I was new to everything, I charged 60 euros. When I did the branding mentoring and I was advised to use the method that I have shared with you today, I realized that if I was going to do that, I would prefer to go for a heavier quality silk, because if I was upping my price, the material cost is almost the least, it plays the least influence on it. So I upped the quality of my silk. I did the multiplication by 2. And then I discovered that my price, once I had my new gift boxes, was 140 euros. So I went from 60 to 140 euros just in one go. And the very first event I did was a juried event at a gallery in County Cork. And I was very careful. I still had scarves that I had been pricing at 60, and I had all my new stock that I was pricing at 140. So I put the scarves, Jane, I had done that doubling for the multiplication, everything. I put the scarves that were 140 euros at the outside edge of my stand. I cannot recommend enough that you have more expensive items visible. And you must make sure that the price is on every single item. And even though there were 60 euro scarves and 140, I sold dramatically more of the 140. In fact, I was the top seller at that event that year. I think I only sold one scarf for 60 euros. So you need to just have the confidence, go for it. And I actually hand sign my scarves. And I used to tell people how I did that, but I'm happy to share it here now, because in the spirit of sharing these things, you can see up at the top there on the screen, you can see my handwritten logo. So I actually had a rubber stamp made, and I use a textile ink, and I sign all my silk scarves, and people absolutely love that. It's a personal touch. So yes, multiply by 2, that's it. Okay, I'm going to see now, have we got some more questions? Okay, here's one from Lisa. Hi, Lisa. Hi back from Clasheen. Great to see you here. Thank you for joining. So, repurposed upscale clothing. Really good question. I'm actually wearing one of my own tops that I bought this new, and I wore it for years. And then this year I eco printed it. You're not going to see the whole thing, but I sell a lot of eco-printed clothing. It's extremely, extremely popular. So what I do with the eco-printed clothing is I don't offer that to, I don't do trade now, but I don't offer it to galleries, for example. If, I don't go down that route. I only sell it myself. But I have a sort of a policy. I tend to sell, I work through that pricing module, and then I tend to sell things that have short sleeves. Not this, because this is a tunic. So a very small short sleeved shirt, 85 euros. Then I move up to a piece like this would be, let's say, 95 euros to 125 euros. People have no problem paying for them. Cashmere jumpers tend to be around 125. So I would do the multiplication, everything at the beginning. I work out what a trade price would be, and I do add a certain amount on, but I don't necessarily double it totally. But we're talking about anywhere ranging from 85 to about 145 for upcycled clothing. How does that sound? If you have any feedback on that, just let me know. So Mary has an interesting question. Is there a source for determining? I would say no, Mary. And I think for me, I don't really want to go down that route. The person who gave me this advice, I did ask him, could I share it? And he said yes. He didn't want to be credited. But he actually works in extremely high-end retail, and he's been the person who has revitalized some large businesses in Ireland, and he works with clients all over the world, Milan, etc. He's in the fashion industry. He would say you work through that methodology. He told me that most people get scared and they won't multiply by 2.6 or 2.5 at the end. He advised me to do it. I did it, and my sales shot up. Because what actually happens is when you work that out, you're paying yourself fairly for doing the work. You're paying the proper price for the materials. I would prefer to spend a little bit more and buy good quality materials from a reliable, sustainable source where I don't think people are getting paid for slave labor. And there isn't anywhere that you can find out, but I think you shouldn't pit yourself against other people either. And I've discovered at events, like at one of the big fairs where I paid over 4,000 for doing the fair 2 years ago, the last year actually, before lockdown, there was somebody who had eco printing dramatically cheaper than me and felt two or three stands up, like dramatically cheaper. And another friend had beautiful silk scarves and on a different stand, and she was selling her silk scarves painted for 25 euros. My sales didn't affect her and her sales didn't affect me. You need to have confidence and just use a method and go for it. So I hope that helps, Mary. Okay, let's just see. Trisha is saying, you need to find millionaires. Trisha, your work is absolutely beautiful. Trisha is in Edinburgh. And I have big ties to Edinburgh. My father went to Fettes. My grandmother lived in Scotland. So I firmly believe, Trisha, if you priced your pieces, using the formula I've shared, you would find consumers and customers, and they would take your hand off to get them. I honestly can urge you to try it. And the thing is, the people who buy my products, they value the story, they value the materials, they value the care, they value the fact that I grow my vegetation or I forage for my vegetation, but they may not have big incomes, they may not be earning money, but they value what I do, and that's why they buy the product. And I cannot urge you enough, if you put passion and love into what you make and make fewer products, but they really contain a story, you will sell more work. Okay, so let's see. Hey, Lidra. Great to see you here. Lidra and I first met in Kentucky at the Kentucky Sheep and Wool Festival many years ago. Lidra's a wonderful knitter and designer. So thank you so much for joining us. Okay, Lisa, I'm glad that that was helpful. And Mary, thank you very much. So I'm glad you found it. And here's Sarah coming in now. She'll definitely watch from the beginning. So please, if you have any friends and you think that they would actually be interested in this or in any of the previous videos that I'm sharing to do with events and things, just share them with them. I'd be very happy for that. And Margaret, thank you so much for endorsing it. Margaret is a wonderful textile artist in England, and we have eco-printed together in France. So that's really interesting that you followed my advice and it works. So thank you for that, Margaret, because I do think a lot of people are anxious, but you just have to take the plunge and have confidence in yourself, I think. So any final questions, or shall we call it quits for this particular video? I will be uploading videos on a very regular basis every week. And if you do have suggestions for future videos as well, please feel free to leave them in a comment now or afterwards. So thank you so much for your time. I hope I've demystified this somewhat. I hope, yeah, Joe is saying pricing scares her. So I hope, Joe, that I think if you just take the plunge, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. And Vanessa, you're very welcome. Thank you so much to everybody who has also left thank you comments. I really appreciate everything, one and all. So I'm going to end this now and look forward to another chat, another time with all of you. Thanks so much, Mary. Oh, getting loads of thank yous now. So thank you so much. Yeah, just go for it, Wendy. You just absolutely have to. Adrian, hi. Just down the road from me, Wexford. Thanks so much. Okay, folks, I am going to just cut it off now. Thank you so much for watching. Drop me comments if you have questions. Best of luck with all your events. Best of luck with your pricing. But honestly, trust me, this works. Over and out from Clasheen.